We are in the finishing up the series about our Vision Week and the 5 priorities of our church, and we've been talking about priority 5, which is for us to create humanizing housing to address the housing issues that we have here in this area in our parish. And we've been talking the last couple weeks about the 8 marks of home, which is basically the elements that create a home. And I wanted to review those real quick. My facial recognition works. So those 8 marks, for those of us that have been on this and been paying attention, been following, you might want to go back if you haven't had a chance to go to listen to those, but I want to just cover those real quick. The first one, the mark of a home is it's a place of permanence. Second one is it's a place of dwelling. Third is it's a storied place. Fourth is it's a safe resting place. Fifth is it's a place of hospitality. Sixth is it's a place of embodied inhabitation. Seventh, it's a place of orientation. And then 8th, it's a place of affiliation and belonging. So with all of those places, all of those elements together, we take a house or a building and turn that into a home. We take a ministry or an activity and program and make that home for people. I've had such a privilege this past couple of weeks, of people coming and telling me how they're finding home in different places. It's so beautiful to hear that. Please continue to share that with me, and I think that's our call. Today we're going to talk about some logistics specifically about housing, like actually creating housing for the unhoused population. Each one of you should have gotten this document when you came in today. If you guys are on Zoom, there should be a link in the chat. You can click on it. It's Alameda County's point-in-time count. You could find this document there. I suggest you save it, bookmark it, print it up. But I want to make sure that everybody had this document. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I wanted to basically explain what this is. So every 2 years, any community that has HUD funding, which is the National Housing and Urban Development Organization, that's the nation's organization that provides funding to end homelessness, has to do a point-in-time count. So the most recent one was done this January. We participated in it. We actually had guests from our shelter ride along with folks, be able to point out different spaces. Our staff, many of our staff volunteered. Local folks from other organizations helped out. And we went around and we had these little census tracts, and we go count how many people are in tents, how many people are in cars, how many people are on the street. We also give our numbers. Saundrea, who you're going to meet in a second, gives our numbers about how many people are in shelters. And if you notice here, it shows in the top right, it shows that 31% of the unhoused individuals on the street were in tents. 33% were in cars or a van. 22% were in RV. 13% were in the street or outside. And 1% were in abandoned buildings. On that far left, you'll see in 2017, there was about 5,600 people counted in Alameda County. 2019, 8,000 were counted, and this January, 9,747. The darker number, that's 7,135, are people that are out unsheltered on the streets in one way, shape, or form. That blue color there, that 2,612, is how many people do not have a permanent abode, but they were indoors the night of this count. Primary causes of homelessness down there to the left a little bit. The top 6 responses from people that were asked, 27% said dispute with family, friends, or roommate. 25% eviction or foreclosure. 22% job loss. Other money issues, substance, and family and domestic violence. I'll tell you, a lot of us think that it's a different reason, but these are the reasons that we're told across the board. If you go and look in, it says unincorporated, which is the third from the bottom on the right-hand side. That predominantly is our area, our catchment area here for First Pres Hayward. So we have unincorporated Hayward, which is called Cherryland, unincorporated San Leandro, which is called Ashland, Castro Valley, and there's several just unincorporated pockets, which are sometimes they're only a block large, just around the entire county. But in those areas, there were 91 sheltered, which they were sheltered here, and 418 that were unsheltered. So think about those numbers. That's pretty telling. If you look to the left one and down one, you'll see that Hayward, the city of Hayward proper, had 114 sheltered and 267 unsheltered. On both of these areas, we were open that night. So we did have people in our shelters, and we were full in both of those locations, but you see how many people are still on the street. There's quite a bit of information on the backside. You can talk about specific populations. Just like Lauren mentioned, one of the things we can decolonize is homelessness, right? There's a lot of folks who are people of color, people from different genders, people from different sexualities that are being treated in ways that cause them to be on the streets. You can look in race, ethnicity, all of those things are on here. You can look into those things and health conditions. But I wanted to give you this information because this is the problem. This is really, it's a snapshot of the problem. If we could jump over to this other document, and I believe we do have a slide for this one. This is an infographic about what we're doing. So we went back and took a look and see what it is that we've been up to. And if you see on that blue circle, thank you very much, Emergency Rental Assistance Program. So that just finished October 30th. Saundrea here and her team were able to get $9,029,398.02 given to 582 families to keep them in their homes. Can we clap for that? Fam, if you notice, it talked about evictions as a large reason for homelessness. 582 families in this area stayed in their homes because of the work of their team. And there's other organizations doing that around the county, but they don't do it like Saundrea, I'll just say that. All right. Everyone Deserves is the social enterprise that we've started. Many of you have supported. It's employment opportunities for guests. We've sold over 70 packages of dog treats. Come on now, come on. That was made, packaged, and sold by the guests in our shelter. And all of the funds from that went to them. I just went through the spreadsheet, and we've given over $1,000 in gift cards to folks who did work on that. And they basically make $15 an hour working on these dog treats. Also working on the event, the holiday market coming up. Shameless plug. Come and support the guests in the shelter. They're going to be staffing that. Shelter and resource centers, First Pres, within the last year, 10,392 beds. That's at 50 a night, 10,392 beds, and 345 unique individuals. So it's not the same person over and over again. There's 345 different people that were able to sleep here. 7,845 meals. Wow. Sorry, that just hit me. At South Hayward Parish, 584 people, 4,268 beds, 139 unique individuals, 10,340 meals for a total of 564 people. It just blows my mind just how many people are out there and struggling. And when you have a space for people to come and to be able to get their basic needs, they come, right? People are coming. In the food pantry this last year, 1.9 million pounds of food. 1.9 million pounds of food. And that continues to this day. I just wanted you to have a little brief infographic so you see what the problem is, you see some solutions, and I want to invite some of my friends up here for us to maybe talk a little bit about what we do. Let's invite up Miss Saundrea Mabrey, if you wouldn't mind, who is our programs manager. I got you. You got it? And we're also going to bring up Pastor Chizu Buckalew, who actually helped to start this entire thing that we're doing here. And Paul's going to join us, Pastor Paul Kime, grab a seat, to ask us a few questions. And, you know, to kind of preface this, you know, it's difficult, right? It's not an easy situation that we're in. I know we all know it's the right thing to do. Right? I don't think there's anybody that's saying we shouldn't help people, right? But it comes with a lot of difficult peripheral issues. So we wanted to give a chance in this space right here, if it's all right with you all, for us to kind of cover some of those questions, ask some of the questions, hear from us that are doing this work, why we do it, how we do it, and what are some of the answers to the FAQs, right?
Before we start, the last 2 weeks, as I've been at the church since 2016, and the last 2 weeks, the way in which Aaron has expressed through the 8 marks of home has been so beautifully said and so needed. And I think I know for a lot of us, I know for me, and I've talked to a few of us, it's almost like, yes, we're talking about unsheltered, but the 8 marks of home are really what we all need. It's really what the church's role is to provide home, to provide sanctuary. And some of us might have a shelter, but sometimes we still don't have a home, right? And I think the way that Aaron had expressed that the last few weeks has been so needed. So can we just give it up for Aaron for just putting this all together, and so thankful for all the work you do. So thankful, man. Chizu, as the two of us are the elder statesmen of the staff here since 2016, and we've had the privilege of, and not me from seeing it from afar and you just being on the ground in the middle of it, from the beginning of what has been going on and the work that's been going on here. Can you just talk a little bit about who we are really in the community over the last few years?
Yeah, so I think that it has really changed and evolved. I think when we first got started with chance of showers and then the Sunday breakfast and then kind of moving into a winter shelter, I think the church has always been very supportive of wanting to see people that are unhoused, people that are hungry, getting food and getting shelter. And I really think that over the last few years, we've seen it's not just a sweet idea, that there's hard work and there are sacrifices that come around and surround the work that we're doing. And so I think, our work has become wider and deeper and more challenging. I think a lot of us have seen changes around programs at the church, maybe things that we've loved in the past, and those have changed as we are making this commitment. It changes us fundamentally, and it changes who we are. And so I think that's been an evolution that I think we've all gone through together. And I don't know that we've ever really named that with words, but just to say we've really changed and grown over the last handful of years to be this new kind of community. And so I wanted to, put words to that and recognize that. I really also think when I was thinking about today and really expressing, who we are and what we're doing in the community, I was thinking about Matthew 25, and I know we've talked about that passage before here, and I wanted to read a few verses for us, starting with verse 35. It says, "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison or go to visit you?" The king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." I think that really speaks to who we are and what we're doing here. And I was reading, I've kind of referenced this book before. It's basically a commentary of some indigenous folks in Latin America that are giving their commentary on scripture. And so there was something, I know I'm holding too many things, thank you. This is really beautifully said, and I think it speaks to who we are. It says here, "I see that when Christ spoke of the last judgment, he didn't speak of religion, prayers, or rituals. He spoke only of social needs. Let's make no mistake about that. There are religious people who think they are doing good, think they are good people because they give aid, alms, or old shoes. That's not what Christ demands in the gospel. It is a total change in the social system. Christ speaks of visiting the sick. That's the only thing you could do at that time. Now, he would have talked of clinics, free medical service, hygienic conditions, and preventative medicine. And I want to say for us, I think if Christ was talking to us in our context, it wouldn't just be giving people homes or giving people shelter. It would be about creating that sense of home, right? That Aaron's been talking about, that it's not just about, oh yeah, give people somewhere to sleep or give people a blanket. It's really changing the social system, and I think that's been a beautiful thing about who we are, and this work that we're doing together as a family that we're committed to, giving our time, our talent, our treasure to, that is a prayer. That act of service is a prayer to express Matthew 25 in a beautiful way. I'm gonna stop, that was a lot. There you go.
Well, we just wanted to, we've been talking a lot about this in our liturgy meetings, and I think we can all, probably in this room, I think we are very proud of the work that we're doing, and yet at the same time, I think I've shared this before, but I'm gonna do a really quick version of it. When we were doing the food trucks back in 2021, and a woman came through the parking lot and said, "Who's in charge here? I want to talk to who's in charge here." And I was like, "Oh gosh, it's Friday, it's me." And she was like, "What is your problem? Why are you doing this?" And she was yelling because there were people at 7-Eleven who were causing problems by her house. And so I just walked her through, look, like, we started as an emergency shelter because the county had to flush people out of the creek because the creek was really dangerous. And there was no options for these people, so to go, no place for them to go. So it was either back into the creek or into an emergency shelter. The emergency shelter turned into a part-time shelter, which turned into a warming shelter, which turned into a full-time shelter. And within 10 minutes, this woman who was livid, her demeanor completely changed to the point where she said, "How do I donate clothes to the shelter?" And I realized then that she's just uninformed. And it's not, and a lot of, especially in this neighborhood, people who are in houses, we were talking about, like, there's a lot of people that are living in homes that don't feel like they have a home. And so to just be like, "Oh my gosh, they're NIMBYs," like, is not the right response. People are struggling in their homes as well. So we thought, let's combine some of these frequently asked questions, because I know there are many of us in this room who are like, "Look, we're proud of the work we're doing, but there's some things that we're uncertain of, and there's some things that we want to communicate to our friends who don't understand the work we're doing." And so we just wanted to walk through these questions this morning. And the first one, I'm going to direct at you, Aaron, is what is our specific area of responsibility as a shelter and a resource center?
Oh man, that question. I'm glad we thought these questions through, and I honestly, Saundrea and I get asked these questions almost daily. But it's most of the time in the form of blame, right? So it's like, hey, this is your fault. There's a person down this street or over up on that street or up here that came from your shelter. And it's your fault that this person is causing an issue in my neighborhood. And just the reality of the situation is people are people, they're adults, they have the right to choose. People have the ability to go where people want to go. And that's hard for others, right? I think that's really hard for people that don't know the individual. So to answer the question, and we're going to dig into this a little bit later, but to answer the question, really our responsibility is this property. Our responsibility is the property that starts right here at the edge here where that brick wall is and goes all the way over to Los Molcajetes. Not Molcajetes itself, but the line right there back to the tiny homes. And unfortunately, we can't do something about everything in the entire community. So it does require the entire community to step up and be able to work through these issues. But what I will say is our responsibility here is to create a safe space at 2490 Grove Way and 27287 Patrick Avenue. That really is our responsibility. So all of everything that we've created, all of the work that we do, the listening we're doing, the adaptation, I just shout out to Chizu for building this thing, and for it to take off and running, and Saundrea for helping to put together the scaffolding and paint the walls and all of that, is really to create a space that is safe in itself for people that are in a safe, they're able to be safe for themselves or for others. And really, that has to be the decision-making process that we make. If someone is unsafe for themselves or for others, we call for help. We'll get other resources for them, but our job is to make this space in 27287, Patrick, safe spaces.
What about the sidewalk?
Great question. Anybody know? Trick question. Who does the sidewalk belong to? Everybody say me. It's your sidewalk. That's right, exactly right. One of the challenges, he brings that up because we actually were put in a public meeting, we were blasted for the fact that we had one of our people on the sidewalk. And I just want to say, I don't have any people. And I know it sounds funny, but I'm not responsible for actions of others, right? Even my adult children, although I really think I am, I'm not, right? I'm only responsible for me and my choices and my actions. And us as an organization, we can't take responsibility for adults that are doing things, right? But what we can do is create a space for them to come inside and for them to be safe, for them to be fed, for them to get the 8 marks of home, for them to rest well, to be showered, to have clean clothes. That's what we can do.
On that note, Saundrea, I'll direct this one at you. For those who do come onto the property, and we're providing the space for them, one of the questions is, do we currently have rules and regulations or rights and responsibilities document that?
Yes. In order to create this safe space, we have to have rights and responsibilities. And so instead of the general term rules and regulations, we have our guests come in and they have the right to feel safe, and they also have the responsibility to make others feel safe as well. So that is how we create that safe space for others.
This next question is such a good question. I'm just going to ask, I'm going to go with you, Saundrea, again. What are the hours for the shelter and cleaning schedule and all that stuff?
Yes, so Monday through Friday, we are open from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., and that is our resource center. Folks can connect with guests, or guests can connect with case managers, and our intent is to get other services like DMV vouchers and also housing listings. So Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., and then we close down. 7 days a week, we are open for our shelter. That opens at 6:30, and we close at 7 a.m., and everybody has to be off site. So during those hours that we are closed from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., that's cleaning time. So we have 2 hours of cleaning, and then when the shelter shuts down at 7 a.m., we also have 2 hours of cleaning.
So essentially, people have a place to go all but 4 hours a day.
Yes. Monday through Friday.
Monday through Friday.
Yes. And then on the weekends, our resource center is not open. So when folks leave at 7:30 or 7 a.m. every morning, or on Saturday morning, they're not able to come back until 6:30 that night.
What happens to people who aren't staying here in the shelter but are unhoused?
That's a great question.
Thank you. I made it myself. Just kidding.
There's a few things that happen. So when folks are not staying here, they are also still utilizing services. Folks get to-go meals, they get to-go lunches, to-go dinners, and they're also utilizing our services and outside services. So some folks are able, they want to be in the encampments. They are not able to be sometimes in a communal environment, and so they make that choice, but they also still utilize services. We work with other agencies and the street outreach team that goes in the encampments and handles those services.
Aaron, I think this is a really broad question. I'm just going to ask it the way it's written. Why are people homeless? And caveat to that, are they? Well, I'll start with that. Why are people homeless? What is the current reality that causes people to be homeless in this area?
Man, I have been asking that question for 7 or 8 years. Just from my own my own understanding, just wanting to be able to understand what caused something so that we can work towards solutions. I don't know if anybody else identifies with me like that. I need to know what's the one answer so that we can make the one solution and we can just fix this thing. And you already know what I'm about to say. There's not one answer. There's not one. But the one answer that I heard that made the most sense to me is when I went to Austin to that Community First Village that has been doing work for 25, 30 years in this industry. They said that they believe, and I've come to believe this myself, that the sole reason for homelessness is a catastrophic loss of family. And if you sit and think about that, all of the things that I listed that are on the point in time count, all of those have to do with something that a family would do, right? The number one issue is an actual dispute with a family member. That's the number one issue on there that everyone reports. Another one is eviction, right? And I'll say for me and my wife and my children, there's 3 separate times in our adult life, married with 3 children, where we had to move back home. And I don't know if anybody has ever felt that, where you're like, Mom, Dad, can I talk to you? What had happened was, and then it's like, you know, Mom always is like, yes, but I get to go home. And for all of us that we work with, Saundrea could dig deep into this. If you want to pick somebody's brain, this is the brain to pick. A lot of our folks don't have that, or don't have the skill set to be able to work through that relational issue, or too far away, or too far gone, or too disconnected. So I think, like, if I was to give one answer, it's that catastrophic loss of family, but that is also very generic, and that could mean I just don't have $75 to pay a rental application to get into a place. I just don't have somebody to co-sign with me so that I can get the credit to get into a place. I can't get to my medical appointments to get the diagnosis that would give me the voucher to get into a place. I mean, and so on, right? That's a lot of what Saundrea does, is represent that family member to go with people and do the thing. One of the other pieces that I'm constantly asked, and I actually really have pondered this so deep, and there's this thought around people using drugs or alcohol, and that's why they're on the streets. And if you look at the numbers who actually are disclosing that is pretty low. And people have asked me, like, are folks unhoused because they're using? And then the question comes up, are people using because they're unhoused? Right? And I mean, both of those questions are valid questions. And I mean, really, like, it's cold outside. It can be cold in this room for you, and we can layer up, but we get to, I was cold earlier. You know what I did? I closed that door. Right? And that's a foreign concept to somebody on a sidewalk. Sidewalks are very cold. I don't know if you ever laid down on concrete. So sometimes things will warm you up, right? But I would venture to say that as a church, neither one of those questions are our business. Because if somebody's homeless because they're using, or using because they're homeless, like, for us, the question was not, why is this person sick? The command for us is feed people. Sit with the person who's sick. And one thing around addiction, and this is a very profound statement that I heard, that the opposite of addiction is not abstinence. The opposite of addiction is connection. If you really think about that, the things that lead us addicts to use is a disconnection from other people, and from acceptance and affiliation and belonging and all of the marks of home. Missing one of those things would drive us to something, being on our phone, being on the TV, maybe drinking a little, maybe using a little. Those kind of things come from the fact that we are disconnected. So I think really the solution that comes from that question is to connect with people.
I'm going to ask this question, and I know I've heard this question before, and I'll just open up to everyone. Why do we have so many 911 calls to this immediate area? And I know I see the fire truck at least twice a week. I know that there's been comments from people before about the sheriff's presence and yada, yada, yada. Why is it that we have so many 911 calls?
We try our best. So it goes back to the rights and responsibilities. And so if someone is making it unsafe for others, we have to ask for help. And with that comes the sheriff's office, and in Hayward, it comes with non-emergency. And so we work with the sheriffs and the police to go ahead and see if they need any other assistance. So when I say other assistance, if somebody is possibly having a mental health episode, there is a clinician that can come out and assess with that, and then de-escalate the situation and then give them resources. Other than that, I would say, again, it goes back to making it the home safe for everyone. And with the 911 calls, it's a lot of preventive situations. And so before anything big happens, we try to go ahead and bring that 5 down to a 1. And we get that help from PD or the sheriffs.
One piece I would add to that is also in medical situations, what doesn't exist in this community is a way for somebody who's not feeling well right now, that doesn't have access to a vehicle, that doesn't have access to regular medical care, to get that care right now outside of 911. And right now for us, because of our hours, right, people come inside, they've been outside, they've been cold all day, they've been running around, they finally sit down and they realize, my foot really hurts. Like my foot really, really hurts. Like my foot really hurts. And it's like, can we call an Uber? Well, that's putting that Uber person through, you know. I mean, there's situations, we actually had a situation 2 weeks ago where it looks like it was just a sore on a foot. And Saundrea was able to get in touch with a doctor that does the street medicine. The doctor said, based on that sore, send that person to the ER right now, call 911. Based on a sore on a foot. I was completely blown away by that, but it represented some bone infection that could actually have killed that individual. We don't know that, right? The people that we've hired here are compassionate, kind, have really good boundaries, a lot of us have experience with this work, you know, folks in recovery, folks with lived experience of addiction. There's a lot of us that are just kind, compassionate people that do not have a doctorate degree, right? Don't have an MD, we don't have a weapon, and we don't want them. So we have to work with those systems, I think, to call those folks.
You know, what's interesting is you know, on Fridays we have a little thing in the clinic, happy hour, where we just invite people to come hang out, and a lot of local officials or people running for office have been in the space. And one gentleman specifically asked a couple weeks ago, he was like, I love what you're doing, but can I, like, and I know Chizu's already answered this, like he said to me, like, but why? Like, why do you all feel the need to do it? And I just told him straight up, I'm like, there's only 2 options for us, because there's a mandate for us from Matthew 25. I mean, there's not an option. You're a church, you're a body of believers. Like, it's a mandate. So there's 2 options. One is to ignore it and to ignore the mandate that God's given us, or 2 is to engage in it, which is what we've done. And I mean, so it's like we either engage in the mess, which we're called to do, or we become a social club, and it diminishes our witness, it diminishes our life as the body of Christ. I mean, not in my opinion, in Scripture. And I think someone who's not a believer responded really well to that. He was like, I mean, if you weren't, and this is what he said, if you aren't there, nobody would be doing anything. And that was, in regards to that question, in regards to that statement, what is our current relationship with county officials, with the sheriff's department, and so forth?
Also a rapid question that happens quite a bit. Well, I think there's been a lot of groundwork laid by Chizu and Pastor Jake that built deep relationship between our church and the county supervisor's office. I'll say that. I personally used to work at a youth center in San Leandro, and I worked with a lot of the deputies here in preventative work. My wife and I actually worked at the Reach Ashland Youth Center on 163rd, if you guys know where that's at, East 14. So there are some deputies that are like deeply supportive of what we're doing. As a matter of fact, last week and the week before, deputies from the sheriff's office came here and gave out their boots to the guests in our shelter. So they did a boot drive for the whole sheriff's department on ETS on 150th. They went, got everybody to donate all their boots. They brought them down here, set up a table, put together hygiene kits, and gave that out to all the guests so that folks would have good footwear for the winter. That's powerful. Hayward PD did the same thing the following week. Even one of those deputies who retired from Hayward PD and is over here now, set that up over there, got them to do it, and they came out. So there are relationships that we have with individuals that are deep. That one deputy is actually trying to get us a van so that we can drive people around, so that in those closed times we can get people to services, which is a huge challenge for us right now. But we also have a deputy this last week who refused to take somebody off our property because they said that Trader Joe's is public property. And this person was dangerous and was causing a lot of physical problems. And we're just trying to get them to care, like, hey, please take this person to go get care. They're like, nope, hey man, just go sit over there, right? And that's really detrimental to what we're doing, because now we're spending all our energy dealing with this one, and we've got to, I know we got to leave the 99 for the one, but it's not good when they're all asleep in the gym without supervision, right? So we need to rely on those, right? There are higher ups in the sheriff's department that are extremely supportive and are actually gunning to work with us even more and be much more collaborative in the future. And there are those that are a little bit old school and believe that it's our fault that people are here in the community causing issues. So that exists, and they're humans. We're flawed. Some of our staff are really professional with the police, and some are the opposite. Right? And we're all human, right? We all have our decisions to make in those moments, and we're constantly working through how we can respond out of health, not out of our own trauma, which comes up a lot. The sheriff's office, I'm sorry, that's the sheriff's office. You mentioned like Nate Miley's office. Richard Valle is the county supervisor over South Hayward in that area. And I think we have a great relationship with both of those offices. I think they understand the work that we're doing. There are tough questions that come out of that. You know, before Jake left, they actually scheduled a meeting, and the county supervisor, Nate Miley, brought 5 of the most angry neighbors to a walkthrough of the space, like what you mentioned. We walked through the space, did a tour, and they sat down here. They actually said some things that were off the chain in the gym with the guest here. We had to move them in here, and they literally were yelling at us. And at the end of it, that one guy who was yelling mentioned that he had 2 brothers that were struggling with addiction. And they're on the streets, and he's the only brother who could get into housing, and he bought a house right up here, and we're letting people get away with that, and it's on us. And then he paused and he said, I'm really glad that you guys are doing this, because I couldn't do it. And I was just like, wow, praise God. So, I mean, the relationship with our neighbors, there's some that it's great, and they communicate with us, hey, you got somebody over here, do you mind just helping us out? And we will, we'll do what we can, but we can't be responsible for every neighborhood on every block, right? There are some that are giving complaints and filing complaints, right, in both locations. So it's tenuous, I would say, in some instances, and some, there are number one volunteers. Saundrea's got a family, brought 6 members every week for the last 5 weeks. Their entire family is coming to volunteer. They live 1 block up from South Hayward Parish, right? So there's certain units that are trained very highly in the police department. They're called crime prevention units. They've got all kinds of training on de-escalation and dealing with the unhoused population and people that are heavy users or people that have mental illness. And then there's some that just show up and they're just shock and awe, and that doesn't work very well. So, I think the relationships are give and take, right? We're working on it at all times.
We're going a little bit over here, so I'm just going to ask one last question. And then I think we've committed as a liturgy team over this next this next year to really, one of our priorities, priority number 3, is to develop prophetic content and to create a prophetic imagination, or to enable a prophetic imagination and a movement of shalom. And obviously, like, in my opinion, we've been doing this work, but our commitment is to help all of us be incredibly and more informed about the work that's going on here, not just so that you know what to say to friends and neighbors and family who are curious or concerned, but so that we can, this is our parish, right? So we're thinking not just about our unhoused neighbors, but our neighbors who live in housing, and how we can be a blessing to this whole area and inform them and create a movement of shalom in this community. Not just on this property. The last question, and I know it's a hard one, and it's kind of open to everyone. How are we doing all of this work and using all of this money and still having problems in the community? Anyone? No, I'm just kidding.
I would like to respond from a place of health and not from a place of trauma. You'd be surprised how often we get this question, and really an accusation, that we're wasting money, or not using money wisely, or it's so expensive to do this. The difference between a visit to the doctor with a copay of $25 and an ER visit of thousands of dollars is the real cost. So having the outreach team come, Saundrea's, literally around the clock. There's someone that she's working to help get an evening appointment, which is probably the most difficult thing to do, where she's working from her house. It's her birthday this week, y'all. Can we say happy birthday to Saundrea? Happy birthday. But working around the clock to be able to coordinate these things so that a person can get a visit and get preventative care and get the medicines and the interventions they need, so that they're not a 911 call when they can't breathe. So I'll say that's expensive. It's actually more expensive. They've done studies and shown that the amount of services that it takes to support somebody on the street is something like 10 times more expensive than just putting them in a house. It's the same thing. The prison. Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing for the prison numbers. It costs so much more to keep somebody in a prison where they're not being rehabilitated and they're not being treated humanely, and then they're acting poorly because they're not being treated humanely, than it is to just help people with the basic needs that cause that issue. So I would say it takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of staff, and I'll say, if anybody would like to ask that question, please come on down. See what we're doing, see how we utilize funds, see how we steward things, see how much staffing we have versus what you would say, well, you need 2 more people. And I'm like, I agree. That is a great $100,000 idea. Let's do that, because there's that. And another thing is, we need to pay our people better. If we paid our staff better, then they would be less likely to be food and housing insecure. If we could pay people in the general community better, there would be less of these issues, right? And more housing available. I know we got to wrap it up, but before we do, I just wanted to take a quick second. One of the reasons I wanted to have these 2 here is not just because of their insight for these questions, but because of the impact that they have had and continue to have on this community. And I got the call from Jake many years ago to say, hey, you got to meet this person, Chizu. And everybody's talking about Chizu. And then I had the pleasure of working in the office across from her for a whole year as we built this thing to, like she mentioned, from a warming shelter that was only open when it was raining or less than 40 degrees to what it is today, which is a multi-million-dollar operation that is helping hundreds and thousands of people in this community, and the impact that you've created to build that foundation and really to make people be at home.
You are a star.
She really is.
Absolutely.
Like, for reals. And it's not easy. Yeah. And it was hard. It was uphill work. I don't know if you all know, but like the first year, she made all of the meals or coordinated every meal for the shelter by herself.
She still got the look on her face like, yeah, I did.
Her back just hurt real quick. It was like, ow. A lot of lasagna, yes. But also like the foundation of holding the vision of why we're here and what we're doing. So like when I came in, it's like I got to build upon, it's like a trampoline and jump to the next level that Chizu was able to lead us out in building. We had a fortune that there was a volunteer when we first went into Saundrea Parish that was sitting in the corner of the room, and I was talking to the staff and they could not understand what I was saying. I'm like, if you click this and you do that, and then bing, my email pops up with the thing I'm asking this person in front of me to do from the volunteer in the corner of the room who did the thing that they couldn't do. We were fortunate enough to have Saundrea there. And Saundrea went from volunteer to a staff member, to a case management trainee, to a case manager, to case manager lead, to now overseeing all of our programs in both locations, and really the one supporting the frontline staff that are doing this day in and day out, as well as our shelter team. I don't want to leave them out. Alma Flores and Tim Porter for all the work that they're doing. Thank you guys so much. And I'll tell you, a large majority of what we do is giving out meals, but I would say the other large majority of what we do, I would say it's like right 51%. So we got 102%, leave me alone, I don't do math. The other 51% is of supporting our staff as they're working in a situation that is difficult for them to handle. Supporting the staff who are triggered by a situation, who are dealing with a tough situation, I know I'm supposed to love on this person, but they are hard to love right now, right? Or I was just called a name, or something was just, happened that was difficult for me and for us to support that team. And Saundrea does that for dozens and dozens of our staff. And so I just wanted to just thank both of them for building the foundation and growing us to the level we are and taking us to the next level. So thank you both so much. So with that, if you guys wouldn't mind just praying with me real quick. God, we just thank you so much for being able to be here together today. We thank you for the home that you create by bringing us all together as a faith family. And as we talked about the way that we do that for our infants, for our young children, for our elementary school kids, for our middle schoolers, high schoolers, our young adults, all the adults here, folks from different cultures, different languages. I just thank you for the ability to create home here like you've created for us. Pray, God, that you would continue to bless this organization, this faith community, everything going on at Saundrea Parish. God, I just pray that you would continue to bless all of the people doing this work, those that are receiving this aid, help them to be able to gain their resiliency. Pray, God, that you would just strengthen the folks who are in the trenches, God. Help them to realize that they are doing your work. Thank you so much for letting us all be a part of this. And all God's people said,